What if I told you that Hamilton finally feels at home in Ferrari? But not for the reason you imagine. What has changed in the red car so that the 7-time champion will smile again and, most importantly, to believe again? In Spa, Hamilton had access for the first time to the new configuration. Although the classification result was disappointing, which happened later, after the modifications made during the night by the engineers, changed their perception completely. The British described him as a turning point. His trust with the car, the one that cost so much to build in Mercedes in recent years, emerged again in just one session. And the most revealing was not the result a comeback from the pit lane to the 7th place, but how he got it. With a car that finally responded to his orders, which did not betray him in the slow curves and that began to behave as an extension of his natural instinct at the wheel. For someone like Hamilton, accustomed to cars that respond with surgical precision, the SF25 was always a rough, demanding and limited car. But that night in Belgium marked the beginning of a new language between him and the car. The changes not only felt on the track, they reflected in their words, much more charged with conviction. In his subsequent analysis, he said textually, "I feel very optimistic for next week. I think the car will be much better and I will be ready." It is not common for Hamilton to have promises in the future if he does not have a clear reason to believe in them. The interesting thing is that this change occurs right on the threshold of a critical event, the Hungary Grand Prix, a track that has historically been a perfect laboratory to evaluate the balance of cars. There, any tensile weakness, curve passage or tire management is amplified. And it is precisely where Ferrari will prove the true scope of his new solutions. That Hamilton is willing to place expectations on that specific date is not a casual gesture. It is a sign that, at least in the technical, he believes that Ferrari is closer than ever to offer him the car you need to compete. All this happens in the middle of an environment where Ferrari is still under magnifying glass. The Italian press, always impatient, had already begun to question the decision to sign Hamilton after Australia. However, its evolution after just 3 races begins to offer answers. Not only in his rhythm, but in his reading of the car, in his direct collaboration with the engineers and in the way he has managed to react. Lewis is not simply adapting to the car, it is transforming it. And Hungary will be the definitive proof of whether that process has a future, or if it was just a momentary mirage. During much of the start of the 2025 season, the SF25 was perceived as a frustrating car, both for its pilots and for the technicians in Maranello. Although their potential in certain contexts seemed real, inconsistencies were so obvious that they questioned the true car of the car. The car suffered in low-speed traction, it was unstable in long braking, and its ability to maintain constant aerodynamic load in slow curves was at least questionable. That was the basis of technical discontent that accumulated silently during the first 3 major awards. But all that changed with an update that was not announced with fireworks, but was carefully introduced into Spa-Francorchamps, a completely redesigned rear suspension. This component, beyond its technical sophistication, symbolizes a change in Ferrari's design philosophy. It is no longer about covering holes or softening defects. It is about redesign from the root, the architecture that supports the aerodynamic base of the car. With this new suspension, Ferrari can operate the SF25 in a lower handling height, which allows the soil effect to be better exploited, increase aerodynamic load without compromising stability and, above all, improving the dynamic equilibrium of the car between curves of different speed. This is a huge technical advance, because one of the main problems of the car was precisely its inability to find a stable balance that would work both in slow and fast curves without compromising one or another end of performance. But the development did not stop there. Ferrari has prepared for Hungary a new car soil specification, with an intricate and deeply optimized aerodynamic design to work together with the updated rear suspension. These modifications to the soil represent the nucleus of the SF25 development program by 2025. These are pieces that not only change the airflow, but also reconfigure how the car generates its aerodynamic load from the flat bottom, the most critical area in the monoplaces of modern soil effect. This is especially significant when it is considered that, so far, telemetry data has revealed a clear weakness of the SF25 in the low-speed curves. Hamilton and Leclerc, 2 opposite but complementary driving styles, agreed on something. The car did not easily rotate, required constant corrections and sacrificed time every time he faced a technical section with closed direction changes. With the new pieces of the soil, Ferrari not only seeks to minimize that defect, but to transform it into a strength. The synergy between the redesigned suspension and the new aerodynamic floor opens the door to a much more ambitious technical concept. A more predictable car, more efficient and capable of competing consistently in diverse conditions. The fact that these improvements arrive in Hungary is not a coincidence. Hungaroring is one of the most technical and rev-irate circuits of the calendar, where McLaren's domain has historically challenged teams that manage to find the perfect balance between traction and agility. Ferrari knows it, and that is why he opted for Hungary to be the scenario of his true competitive debut as a contender to the title. The implementation of these improvements also responds to a long-term structural strategy. It is no longer just about adapting to each track with patches or temporary solutions. Ferrari wants to establish a stable platform from which he can continue to develop the car for the rest of the year. This type of modular approach is what allowed McLaren to build the success of 2024, and now Ferrari seems determined to follow a similar path. In this context, Hamilton's role is key. His experience in development, his sensitivity to the wheel, and his ability to detect structural problems in the behavior of the car make him a central piece of the new Ferrari. Its direct involvement in feedback on suspension and its practical validation in Belgium have accelerated the trust process between pilot and engineers. It is no longer a pilot adapting to a foreign car, but an elite competitor molding a machine to measure. The SF25 is no longer a technical frustration and is beginning to be an attack tool. Hungary will be the laboratory where it will be known if that potential has finally been released. There is a question that inevitably floats in the air of Formula One every time Ferrari seems to take a step forward. Is this the beginning of something serious or simply other passenger mirage? The recent history of the Scuderia is plagued by moments in which a technical or competitive rebirth was glimpsed, only for weeks later to fall apart under the weight of its own disorder. Therefore, although the sensations left by the SF25 after its last updates are hopeful, skepticism remains part of the narrative. The great unknown revolves around consistency. The Hungary Grand Prix will not simply be an aerodynamic test, but an emotional and strategic test for the team. Ferrari should not only demonstrate that their updates work on paper or in ideal conditions, but can be stayed competitive throughout a full weekend, under pressure, classification, and career, with different tire strategies and without margin of error in boxes or in decision-making. Hungary becomes, then, a kind of final exam. Not because of what is played at points, but for what it can mean at the psychological level for the entire Ferrari ecosystem. A solid result would validate months of work in Maranello. I would confirm that Hamilton has found the rhythm within the SF25 and would send a clear message to the rest of the grille. Ferrari is back, and this time it may be to stay. However, if the weekend is twisted, if the improvements do not yield as expected, if strategic errors return, or if the car does not respond as it should in career conditions, then the narrative will return to the point of origin. Ferrari like that sleeping giant that always seems to be about to wake up, but never ends up. And that would be a very hard blow, not only for its championship aspirations, but for the internal trust of a team that has invested everything in this new technical direction. The difference between a new era and another mirage, in this case, is reduced to execution, to the ability to translate positive sensations into tangible results. Hamilton already showed in China that he can do magic if the car allows him to attack. Leclerc, despite its ups and downs, is still one of the fastest pilots in the world on a return. But none of that matters if the structure behind them does not behave with the precision of a clock. Hungary will not be just another career. It will be the time where we will define whether we are facing a Ferrari of words or of facts. Now, after multiple internal changes, of a deep transformation in its technical approach and the structural redesign of its car, that intention seems more tangible than ever. Hamilton's words no longer sound like simple institutional speeches. They are supported by authentic sensations on the track, for real improvement data, and, above all, for a work dynamic that has evolved. What has happened in Belgium cannot be underestimated. It was the initial validation that the car can respond, that the SF25 project has a solid base to grow. But what happens in Hungary will be the definitive validation. If Ferrari manages to consolidate its performance, if the soil improvements work in perfect harmony with the new rear suspension, if Hamilton and Leclerc can finally exploit all their talent without structural limitations, then the championship could live an unexpected change of rhythm. It is not exaggerated to think that this evolution can make Ferrari a third firm vertex of the fight for the title, along with McLaren and Red Bull. But if that does not happen, if the improvements do not translate into results, if the car becomes again as an empty promise, then the damage can be even greater than a simple defeat in the race. It would be a loss of strategic confidence just when they needed it most. And this is where you, as an amateur, as an analyst from a distance, or simply as a lover of Formula One, enter the scene. What do you think of all this? Do you think Ferrari has found the correct key this time? What Hamilton is leading a real revolution within the team? Or are you still seeing this as another desperate attempt of a team that fails to rebuild its ancient glory?